say no. Anybody have any questions related to this item? Seeing none, item 5C, discussion relating to approving a final plat of landing at Delaney Cove, Section 12, a subdivision of 16.378 acres located in the SF Austin League Number 4 Survey A2, City of Marque, Gaussian County, Texas. And I have our consulting city engineer, Den Ho, available if anybody has any questions on that
one. Mr. Jackson, I do. When I was reading in that through the portion with ABHR and their bonds, the description kind of leads that they will continue the maintenance of all the roadways throughout that for the life of those bonds and even beyond. Is that true?
Mr.
I mean,
Hope?
typically we've been told that they're turned over to the city, but if they're funding bonds for that on the public, then that should be something they continue to do. Which way is it?
Den, are you here?
Mr. Mbta, would it be okay if I deal with that just a little bit?
Yeah.
So it sounds like Den is not available right now. So there may be some generic language in the bonds from ABHR that talk about roadways. As you know, they use those boilerplate bond forms on a regular basis. I would agree with you if they were issuing bonds for that, they would need to continue to do it. But I don't believe that is the case. We can verify that with the developer. I know when the plat was looked at, there were no objections to the plat as submitted. So that would mean the roadways were all acceptable to the city for taking those over.
Derek, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm aware of that. That's good. But it was just the way it was worded in there. It looked like the responsibility for all maintenance of it would fall to them. And that's just what I was looking to clarify.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to comment?
Yes, no, sir. The maintenance, once the roadway is constructed and accepted by the city, we have a 1-year maintenance period where the contractor and developer is responsible for any defects. After the 1-year period, the city will do a final inspection, and then any items that are in need of repair, they're required to fix it, and then before we officially accept it into city maintenance. The cost of the road bonds, the cost of the bonds is only for the construction of the project. Maintenance responsibility falls back onto the city once it's accepted. And okay. I don't believe they, in this particular mud, have any road power. So the bonds that they're selling for is only for WS and water, sewer, and drainage only. Does not apply to any construction of the road.
Okay, thank you. That's typically the way I've understood. Just a little, I read it a little different, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on item 5C? Okay, moving on, item 5D, discussion relating to accepting the City of Marque's audited comprehensive annual financial report as fiscal year ending September 30th, 2019. And I have Susie available if you have any questions related to the audit. Any questions on D? Item E, discussion relating to approving agreement with Mbta LLC, doing business as Accounts Receivable Collections Group to assist with EMS delinquent collection services. I have Chief Weidman and Susie both available for this one. Any questions on item E?
I have a question on that.
I was just hoping you guys could provide me some clarification. I wanted to make sure I understand what's on this item. So this is approving a change of who we contract with, or just adding a new service with a current contractor?
Chief Weidman, you want to start?
Yes, sir. I believe that may actually be a Susie question. We had met with Marie Brown from Intermedics, which is our CN1 who does our billing, and she had noted to us at the beginning of March that we needed to start up our process again for collection agencies, and she had recommended this company. So this will be the point when we need to put it out for collection for non-resident collections only.
Okay.
Susie, you want to follow up?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
Oh, this is on item 5E, the discussion on the
EMS collection?
yeah, EMS collection. Councilwoman McAuliffe asked just for an overview of what this is and what it does.
Oh, okay. This is just for collecting for any non-resident ambulance services, delinquent accounts. And the reason we go with this company is because Intermedics, who have a contract with the city, is doing the billing, but they are not responsible for the delinquent accounts collection. So they're using this company for the collection, and that's why, to allow for smooth process, we just want to use the same company that they do, because they already have access to each other's database.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions on 5E? Okay, moving on to item 5F, discussion relating to approving agreement with Mbta LLC, doing business as accounts receivable collection group to assist with utility delinquent collection services. Susie, you want to talk about that one?
We've never had a collection agency to handle the delinquent accounts right now. These accounts are just sitting out there, and then we write off over a period of time. So usually, according to our policy, anything that's exceeding 90 days, we just write them off. But at least that gives us some slim chance of getting some collection. Just, doing whatever we can.
Any questions on item F, 5F?
Yeah, King. Susie, King,
Yes,
it doesn't
sir.
matter. I can understand why we went with this same company with the EMS using Intermedics, and these guys actually working with Intermedics. But what do we have as far as record of collections, collection rate? What sort of information do we have on this company as it relates to delinquent utility accounts? Why did we choose this company? And why didn't we perhaps look for companies that may be or may not be more effective?
We did look into Linebarger. Their collection fee is 30%, and this company offers 20% collection fees. Second reason, they already have a lot of clients that has STW system, which gives them easier access into the STW database in the utility billing module. So they are very familiar with the STW system. With Linebarger, it's more familiar with Encode, which is the court.
So this
sorry about
particular
the
company.
connection. Maybe I'm.
Hey,
Hello,
she's having some connection problems. I don't think she could hear you. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Well, King, maybe you might answer it for me, because it sounds like she's saying that this company has other cities and municipalities that they do this for as far as their delinquent utility accounts. Does that sound like what she's saying?
Yeah, that is correct. And they actually specialize their collection. They specialize utilizing the financial software that we use for utility billing. So they're familiar with it and they're used to working with it. They do it with other cities, to where some of the other entities that we looked at, they don't specialize in STW. They specialize in Encoder. They specialize in Tyler or something else. And so this group was the most well-rounded to fit in with the systems that we already have in place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that they had experience with this already, and so I'm good.
Yeah, well, absolutely they do. Any other questions? Item 5G, discussion relating to adopting resolution R 2020-0006, consenting to the inclusion of land into Galveston County Municipal Utility District number 68. So I'll talk about this one. We had Mr. Padua in a while back. You have this resolution in your packet. We had Mr. Padua in a while back and had some discussions about PID versus MUD. And we had requested that he go back to MUD 68 and work with MUD 68 to include his proposed subdivision into MUD 68. He has done that, and they have sent this to us. As a governmental entity, we have to allow the MUD to annex their utilities out of our jurisdiction. And so this ordinance would allow MUD 68 to take over their utilities for that new subdivision that Mr. Padua had presented to us. Anybody have any questions on that one? Okay, moving on to item number 6, old business, discussion related to the COVID-19 disaster declaration. We talked about putting this on the agenda from the last special meeting, and I think from the meeting before that, just so we kind of have a chance to talk about some of the things that are happening and some of the stuff that is coming on down the road. Just so you know, there was a call this afternoon, the governor's mayor's call, and Mayor asked me to sit in that call with him. They did discuss the first funds becoming available for COVID directly related expenses. We don't have a whole awful lot to do to to be eligible for our first sum of money that we can recover for expenses that we've had. Basically, we just have to get in and register and show that we're signed up and we have related expenses. And that first available sum that we have will be allotted based on reimbursement for expenses that we've had. So the expenses we've had up to this point, we should be able to get those expenses reimbursed fairly quickly. Pretty interesting discussion on there this afternoon, I think, between that basically centered around a lot of the county judges. So there was 2 different types of funding that were made available. If you were a county over 500,000 in population or a city over 500,000 in population, you actually got a direct disbursement as part of the CARES Act to help cover expenses. So we have 6 cities and counties, or 6 counties with cities in them that fit the bill for the city and the counties to receive a direct disbursement from the Treasury. Houston, Harris County being a prime example. So they've already received access to a bunch of these funds, but there was other funds made available for the other cities and counties in Texas. That other fund balance was about there was 3.2 billion that went to there's 5.6 billion total, 5.06 billion total that came to Texas. 3.2 billion went to those 6 counties with the large cities. So you're talking Houston and Harris County got theirs, Dallas and Tarrant County, Austin and Travis County, San Antonio, Bexar County, El Paso County, and there was one other one. I don't remember what. The other one would have been Fort Worth in their county. So they've already got their disbursements. That left about 1.85 billion to be dispersed to other local governments. It appears that the leadership in the House and Senate in Austin worked together to come up with a plan for disbursement of that money, and they decided to go basically to a per capita disbursement. So they basically took the balance that was given to us, and they did it based on population. And based on that, now they are making the avenues open for everybody else to get to their disbursements as well. You can get up to 20% initially. Once you file your certification, you can get up to 20% initially, and then you can go up to the full 20% or to your full amount that you were given. There was a lot of discussion on that call today with county judges. Basically, so in a county like ours, each city will get the way they designed it. Each city would have their trunk of money that they can use based on their population. The county doesn't get credit for the population inside the city of Marque. The county gets credit for the population in the unincorporated area only. So for a lot of the counties, they were not very happy about that. because they felt that they were funding the healthcare district and they were funding all this other stuff, and they wanted to get the money and then determine what was going to happen with it. And that's not the way it was set up. So for Galveston County, each of the entities in Galveston County will get their allotment, and then Galveston County will get an allotment based on the population in the unincorporated area. This money the money has to be spent the way I took it on the call today. This money has to be spent by December 31st. And if my numbers were correct on what they put out, I don't know how any of the cities are going to spend the amount that they were given. I mean, it's pretty large numbers. And there's only certain things that will qualify. And there was already some discussion today about trying to make law enforcement expenses qualify, trying to make fire expenses qualify. There was a bunch of other discussion on there today. But I think the expenses we've incurred to this point, I mean, easily covered with just our first 20%, and probably a big share of expenses that we would have on further down the road are related to this as well. So expenses for masks, gloves, any equipment, any medical equipment that we had to buy as part of this, any safety equipment that we bought for staff in any way, the work that we're having done in the city buildings with the partitions being put up and that stuff, that should all be covered. Now, we shouldn't have any trouble recovering the costs that we've had to this point. I think there'll be a lot of questions in the next few days. And the governor even said today that he was pretty, there's a lot of questions they haven't got answers to yet either. What will definitely qualify, what won't, how. But we do know if it's directly COVID related, it qualifies. The reason that they made the money available the way they did, and it actually makes sense, having the first 20% available right now, their whole thought process behind that is, and then the rest of it, then once you turn in enough receipts to be able to draw down on the extra amount that you have, their whole thought process is, we're liable to see more waves of this, and there's going to be some hot spots that are going to break out, and they want that money. They want that money available at the time that those things pop up. And we still got some counties in Texas, a few counties in Texas that don't have a case. They're rural enough that they have not had any cases at all. And so they actually even talked today about, why would you send money to those counties where on December 31st, the federal government's going to claw all that money back, where we may have some other counties with some major issues that are going to go over what they were actually given and maybe have a way to look at redistributing some of that if we had some major bad areas in the state. Redoing our disaster declaration, very important, keeping it up to date, very important. Because we do have the ability to recover our costs directly related to COVID-19 through December 31st. So we just heard this afternoon at 4. Haven't even really had a chance to look. One of the items we have a little bit later, we'll talk about this again. Item 7, the first one, a new business, is about the budget, about the ordinance, ordinance, and the whole purpose of that is to be able to track the funds a little bit easier. Whatever money we're spending, we'll be able to track it easier. I'll be able to pull reports out to send in a whole lot easier by doing that deal. So if anybody has any questions related to the declaration or I think what we're doing under the declaration as a city, we'll be more than happy to talk about those right now.
I just wanted to clarify, Tink, something you'd said previously, that, we as a municipality have very little freedom, as it were, to either have stronger, more robust restrictions or lessen, the restrictions and the rules passed down from the state, correct?
That is still correct, pending the declaration that's going right now. Now, May 15th, that may change.
Okay.
But right now, under the existing state order, he has basically rescinded parts of the Emergency Act that allow local governments to enact things that are more restrictive than what he has in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, if I could just step in
Sure.
a little bit, one caveat to that is the latest governor's order, I believe, has the expiration date of May 19th. Because the second round of openings starts on May 18th, we actually are anticipating another extension, but we just can't be sure until that comes out.
And the extension that you guys approved in the special meeting last week mirrors his. So if he extends his, ours extends with it up until the point that his is is lifted, and then at that point we'll have to determine what we're going to do locally once we get the ability to be able to do that again. Because right now we really don't have the ability to do anything but what he's doing. Any other questions on item 6A? 7A, discussion relating to adopting ordinance O-2020-0003, amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget disaster fund for COVID-19 crisis by increasing various accounts expenditures as set forth in Exhibit A. As I mentioned earlier, and I'll let Susie follow up on this a little bit more, what we're trying to do under this ordinance is to establish a line item in each department for COVID-19 response, so that their expenditures for safety equipment, for whatever we need to do, can be more easily tracked, and make sure that we don't miss anything at the end of the day for reimbursement. Susie, you got anything else you want to add to that?
This is really for budgeting purposes. Per state law, we're not supposed to spend anything that's not budgeted. So we're just trying to follow the process. If we do get reimbursed, then it'll offset the expenditures.
Any questions on item 7A? Okay, item 7B, a discussion relating to current and future uses for the A, B, and C buildings and property located at 4916 FM 1765. Councilwoman McCullough, if you want to start on this one. You're muted.
Sorry. So, yes. So this has been, the future of what to do with the buildings. Obviously, we've talked about it different times, and it has been something that I have desperately wanted us to broach more and more. But essentially, as far as the future of these buildings is concerned, I'm eager for us to just start the conversation around, first, what's the status of these buildings, of A, B, and C? And actually, that's where I'll stop. What's the status of buildings A, B, and C?
Okay, Chase, you're on here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, why don't you and Dan handle that question?
So basically, Building C is the Public Works Administrative Office right now. Building B is basically an open community room for meetings, etc. And Building A basically is somewhat of a storage unit.
Okay, so Chase, why don't you guys follow up with, construction on B and C completed? Give us the rest of that too.
Yes, sir. Construction on Building C is complete. We've closed that out several months ago. Building B was where Public Works are occupied before, so it's available. Building A is an old warehouse that's currently in a deteriorating condition. We have roof issues that needs to be addressed, and there are among other things inside the building that we don't even want to look at, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's not in the greatest condition, but that area tends to flood. It's a low-lying area, especially the parking lot. So we've got some drainage issues on the backside, parking lot issues. I think we've addressed some of the front lot issues with just TxDOT improving the drainage along 1765. So in the last several rainfall event, we haven't experienced any type of flooding that we're aware of. But building A is in pretty bad shape, and just got to figure out what we want to do with it. But we also have drainage issue on the backside where the parking lot is, because it floods during any and every rain event.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Casey. You're fine.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Chase. So yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to know. And so with that knowledge in hand, I want to know, what are we going to do about building A? I feel like we as a council have to make, have to make good on our investment for the public. You know, we have to make sure that we spent considerable money on something that is going to bring true tangible benefit to the public. And so I want to know, I want to start the conversation around, can we tear down building A and build a new, better building? Or can we tear down building A and turn that lot and the surrounding acreage into public use? Can it become a park of some kind? Can it become a green space? What? Or can we make the necessary, like, do we start the process of figuring out what this building could be and how much it would cost to fix it? You know, basically, what are we gonna do? And I don't know the legalities surrounding that, considering the bonds and whatnot that we took out.
So let me hit a couple things first, and I'll ask Dan, I guess, to follow up with assessing the building itself, I guess, would be the way to put it. There was some questions recently about our ability to be able to, if we would be able to sell that building and part of that property, rather than rebuilding or doing something else. So we talked to bond counsel about that. Susie and I did maybe a month ago. I don't remember exactly how long it's been, but it was about a month ago, 2 months ago. Well, actually probably 2 months ago now. I think the final answer we got was we could look at selling that property as long as we didn't make money on it, because the bond wasn't to, one of the bond purposes was not to make money. The purpose was to do things. But if we looked at selling that building and part of the property, that was a viable, I think that would be a viable option, and then use that money to pay down the debt. I think as far as the ability to be able to just say, okay, we want to just tear it down and do something else, or we want to tear it down and rebuild it, or we want what, I think we're going to have to talk to bond counsel and see how the bond was worded to be able to determine if anything like that is a possibility under the bond. And that's something I could sure ask some questions on and see what we can find out as far as, could we tear it down and make it open space instead? Does that still meet the requirements of the bond? Or could we tear it down and rebuild something else, maybe smaller in scale there that still meets the purposes of the bond, and then do a park or something around it, or whatever? I think we need some time to visit with bond counsel about that, to make sure that we meet the intent of that bond, and make sure that we're not going to that we wouldn't get in any trouble in making those decisions. Dan, why don't you talk about, if you can, I mean, I know you weren't prepared for this, but why don't you try to talk a little bit about an assess of what you think would have to be done to the building to be able to utilize it in any way, or what you think we could do there?
So currently, as it sits, it's utilized as storage, record storage. And the main issue is the roof. The roof is in poor condition. There's potential hazardous molding and things of that sort that we were kind of looking in the building. We've noticed a lot of stuff that's just been sitting in there and have molded over time. You know, to be honest, if there is an opportunity to dispose the building or rebuild it, raise the slab up, because that area is in a low-lying area, and raise it out of the floodplain, or give it add a couple of a foot or two of fill to raise the finished floor elevation so that it doesn't flood. I think that was one of our main concern. You know, TxDOT fixing, repairing or maintaining the ditch, that helps, but we haven't experienced a significant rain event since that ditch cleaning, so we don't know exactly, you know, where that level is. But I can tell you that the finished floor elevation is pretty low in that building as the other. So if anything, the cost to replace the roof, if I recall, was close to $300,000. Is a significant number.
Okay.
Tink.
Yes.
I want refresh me, and you may not know this. You weren't around when this particular deal was made. but maybe you might know because you've been following it. Who did the inspection on building A?
I have no clue.
I'm trying to remember.
Can Chase answer that, or Casey, do you know?
I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to look into it and find out. We can find out though.
Yeah, I'd like to find out who did the inspection on building A. I'd like to find out where the report is at for the inspection on building A. And Chase, you may know this one because you've been around. What's the value? What's the dollar value that they placed on building A?
Do you remember that that value that they placed? I know we have a report somewhere that let me look for you, Councilman Bell. I'll find that report. One second.
Yeah, I remember those. I remember looking over those documents, and I wish I could remember the name of the contractor that we had come look at it. I remember there was questions about the roof then.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, cool. So, Tink, you can find out some basic stuff from the bond council about, the legalities surrounding whether we could demolish it or not, or what we can and can't do. Okay.
Absolutely. We will get some basic guidelines on what we're allowed to do and not do there, and we can get those back to you.
And so construction is done on building C, but I mean, is the consensus that it's going to flood as well? Like that it's just definitely we're headed towards that building flooding over and over again also?
I don't know that that's, we had some problems with water. Obviously, when I first got here, we had problems with the drainage right there. That drainage that runs along the front end of it was TxDOT drainage, and Den and Chase got with them, and they got that drainage in the front fixed, and that definitely alleviated a bunch of the problem as far as flooding around the building. And I actually have a note in here. I was going to ask Den about this tomorrow. If we're still having flooding in the back and we're not having any in the front, is it a potential that that's a grading issue that we have there, and we could fix that just by regrading that parking lot?
Yeah, we can certainly raise the parking lot, or I think if anything, what we need to do is add some internal storm sewer drainage, because it's for a lot, that parking lot that large, there's no internal drains or anything. It's just a straight sheet flow from one end of the building to the right of way, and that's really one of the major issue with that area is there's no local, everything sheet flows in that parking lot. There's no internal drainage to capture it, and that's why a lot of time you have a little growth or vegetative growth that blocks that drainage, and the water just kind of sits there for a day or two before it dries up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's potentially, that's potentially something we can fix pretty easy.
I think so. Yes, sir.
Somebody
was trying to talk, but they cut out.
As far as the finished grades
for sump pumping and French draining.
Yeah, French drain or area inlets to collect the flow, and then we'll have to do some work along the Garrett Road because the ditch there is very shallow, especially on the back side, on the north side of the north parking lot, which is the rear parking lot of the building. The ditch there is very shallow, so we can do some work there to alleviate some of the localized flooding. And again, the finished floor elevation on each of these buildings, it's a hair over what it needs to be, and that's not saying a whole lot.
Right.
Tink, if you want, I'll make the same offer that was made to our previous city manager, Carol Butler. It wouldn't have cost us not one penny, strictly because, in the full disclosure, he is a distant relative nephew, but he is also president last year was president of the Houston Area Roofers Association, and their business is commercial roofing, although they do residential too. But he was willing to come out because of our relationship and do a full assessment of the roof for free. And I believe that we can still take advantage of that if you'd like a current assessment of it to see whether it needs replacement or repair.
Okay, we'll get somebody to work with Den, and we'll definitely get an assessment done on that roof to see exactly what we're looking at. Den, do you remember you gave a excuse me, you gave a figure a while ago for what you thought was estimated to be the repair? We had it looked at once, that I'm assuming.
Yes, sir. And I'm trying to find that estimate from LMC Construction. They had sent up an estimate, and part of that estimate was replacing building C, which is the one they did, and that was included in that contract for renovation. So let me find that total estimate for the roof, and I'll send it your way if you don't already have it.
Okay. Casey, back to you.
Well, this is good. This is great. This is where I wanted this conversation to go, was just have an action plan about what we can do to mitigate. You know, I think it's clear that these buildings they need help if we're going to make sure that they continue to be a good thing for the public, and particularly with building A. I know it's a hot mess, so I just want us to know what we're going to do. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, I'll work with Dan and Chase, and we'll get some stuff put together on this, and then we'll put it back on the agenda for the next meeting to give you a report on what we found. On the questions that were asked. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on 7B? 7C, discussion related to job description for proposed in-house city attorney position. So first of all, I want to apologize for this taking the length of time that it did, but it was kind of confusing there for a while as to what we were going to do with this, or what was requested on this. Originally, we started working on an RFP that would have been similar for re-establishing the city attorney position, I guess, in a similar manner as to what it was established previously, which was contract work. Then there were some questions from council related to looking at bringing this to an in-house position. Could we do this as in-house rather than or at least attempt to do this as an in-house item rather than having it under contract like it was before? So we basically had to go back to the drawing board on that and look at a job description. An in-house attorney would be a job description and be very similar to hiring a city manager. You need a job description, and you kind of would do it along that same format. So we got a job description put together that is in your packet, and covers most of the stuff that we heard discussed in the city council meeting 2 or 3 meetings ago, where we had this final discussion on the in-house city attorney position. Understanding that if this is it's on there for you guys to do something with tonight, if this is the avenue that you want to continue forward with, then I think I kind of talked to Dara about this a little bit. I think we can post this. We can see what we get for applicants, and see if this is a mechanism that would work to get us what we need. Knowing that if we find a good applicant, and if you guys find somebody that you want, at that point, you're going to have to do a bunch of things real quick, which is going to be to officially create the position, to officially budget it, and to do all those items that would have to go along with it, all at the same time. So basically, the same time you hired that person, you would have to approve a position, approve a budget amendment, everything to go along with it to make sure that it was all in place to establish the salary. All that would all have to be done basically at the same time. And I think that's doable. I don't think there's any issue with doing that. So we looked at a bunch of the cities around. It's kind of hard to find a similar situated city to something like this, because a lot of the smaller cities around do have an in-house attorney, but they're in-house 1 or 2 days a week. They're not in-house 5 days a week. So they're in-house for 2 or 3 different cities. And we're looking at a full in-house attorney, full-time in-house attorney here. So it's a little bit different. And so when you get to cities that actually have a full in-house attorney, they're normally bigger than we are. So we kind of had to gather, we gathered job descriptions. Charlene worked on the job description gathering from all over the state. I think we ended up utilizing pieces of descriptions from probably 2 or 3 different cities, trying to find what fit what fit for our city and come up with what we thought was a doable job description. So the job description's in your file. If you guys have any questions related to that, I'd be happy to try to answer your questions.
I think at one time, I'm sorry. I was just going to say at one time, Mayor Pro Tem had also suggested that person being the prosecutor as well. And I think he's probably getting ready to speak to that. So I'm going to back off.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I don't even have to say it. I appreciate you saying that for me. That was number one. And Tink, the other thing I think that we need as a council to help us make an educated decision is the amount of resources, financial resources we expend on legal issues. In other words, how much do we pay the prosecutor? How much do we pay Ellis? How much do we itemize in our departmental budgets for quote unquote professional fees? How much of those resources are also used on legal fees? Any expenditure on any legal fee in our city, I think that we need to have that available for the council to look at so that we can understand as it relates to our budget, how much money we could save or how much money we would have to expend more than what we expend now if we bring this position on.
And Councilman Bell, I'm going to apologize to you right now because you asked me for that and I forgot to include it in the packet.
That's okay.
Susie did send me some numbers that we looked at before. Susie, do you happen to have those numbers in front of you? You're muted, Susie.
Sorry, I forgot the mute button. Thank you. I believe the prosecutor, we pay roughly, I believe is about what, 15,000. I don't have it right in front of me. Ellis, I think it was, no, I don't even want to guess on that one because there has been some changes in the recent years. So we need to find a stable year, but no, I think city manager will be able to get you some more definite numbers.
Yeah.
Just off the top of my head, remembering what Susie and I put together earlier, it was around 150,000 a year, I think was what we calculated that we were spending on legal fees. But keeping in mind that, there's still going to be some things like bond counsel, you're still going to have to go out and get bond counsel. Those fees were included in that as well. And then remembering, the other thing to remember in this too is we had Ellis, but Ellis was like 15, I would say 15 hours a week, or it was some small amount. But then when he went over, we paid more. So if we actually had to give him 2 or 3 things to work on in a week, the amount that we had budgeted for him was not enough, and we ended up exceeding that. Sometimes we get into sometimes stuff with personnel issues. You need to get somebody specialized to work on those things. And we have 3 or 4 different attorney firms that deal with specialized things that we talked about Linebarger earlier. Linebarger does our collections through the municipal courts. They do that by law. I mean, there's a whole different mechanism for selecting that legal service, and you can't really lump that into your in-house. Of course, we don't. Linebarger, they get a portion of what they collect, and that's how they're paid too. But there are some restrictions as to you have to do certain things with attorneys a certain way that the in-house would not be able to do. But anything we do, writing ordinances, writing resolutions, legal opinions on things, we're doing all that stuff. All that stuff can be done by an in-house. I really think we have an opportunity now with the municipal court prosecutions. That was kind of tough because some weeks it may not be a lot, but then some weeks it may be a whole bunch. But the same way with everything else. The week before council meeting, we're going to have a lot of review on ordinances and stuff like that, to where other weeks we wouldn't have near as much of that same kind of work. I think we could potentially give this a try with an in-house doing the prosecution, but knowing that if we just slam that person and we overload them, we're going to have a little cushion someplace where we can get them some help until we get everything balanced out and figured out how it's going to work. I think if we find somebody that's interested in doing it, that we feel is qualified and is capable, I think it's worth trying. And I think we would realize at the end of the day, I think we would probably realize some savings. And it's not just the savings on what we're actually expending right now, but it's the savings that come from a supervisor having somebody they can talk to before they make a personnel decision. those kind of things that end up coming back down the road. And then, you end up with a big personnel issue you have to deal with. Now, maybe a 10-minute conversation or a 15-minute conversation with the city attorney before a decision's made makes a whole lot of difference on down the road, in helping us with our costs as well. So I think it's something that, we should give it a try and see if we get. So we may not get anybody that's qualified that wants to do it. We, who knows what's going to happen if we try it. But the only way we're going to find out is to put the job description out there and see what happens.
Mr. Jackson, I do have the prosecutors numbers now, if you guys are interested to know.
You bet. What were they, Susie?
Prosecutors, 2019, we spent $13,135. 2018, we spent $17,775. 2017, $13,080. 2016, $13,965. 2015, $16,325. And 2014, $14,855. So I would say average about $15,000 we spent on prosecutors. Legal cost, 2019, we spent $92,857. 2018, $95,462.52. 2017, $77,295.05. 2016, $131,238.54. 2015, $66,467.52, and 2014, $117,026.51. So it varies. Legal cost, it depends on what legal litigations that you have. It's kind of hard to say. That's why
we're probably looking pretty close. I want to say that that legal average in there is probably somewhere around 85, 90,000 plus the 13 for municipal court prosecutor. And then remember, if we bring somebody in house, then we're adding in benefits and all that stuff too. There's additional costs from all that as well. At the same time, even if it does end up costing a little bit more, there's still a lot of benefit from having 40 hours instead of 15 hours, as far as keeping everything running smooth and not ending up with additional issues down the road. Susie and I'll get a full list of all that put together, and we'll get it out to you guys. Somewhere here toward tomorrow we have the bond ready, but we can probably get it to you the day after that, and see if that helps. So we're probably looking at, I think we safely say our costs are for those two things are somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 a year.
Hey, Tink, when y'all put this together, and I know sometimes hours are billed at different rates depending on who it is there any possibility that y'all could put together a weekly, hourly input for these persons? Because, we kind of need to know what we're asking somebody to do. If they're going to have to put in a 60-hour week sometimes, is that going to be more of the norm, or is it going to be a 40-hour week?
Yeah, I can look at that. That's no problem to put that together too. I think it's pretty, I'll talk to Judge Baker and see what, and we can see what the prosecutors right now, I think, are billing hourly anyway. So we could get an hourly figure for how much time it's taking them. And then and look at the rest of it. We can see if it looks like it's going to be a repetitive 60-hour week or a repetitive 40-hour week. And I'm going to say off the top of my head, it's more likely going to be a repetitive 40-hour, with the exception of attending council meetings. That's probably going to be a lot of the work outside would just be council meetings. But yeah, we'll sure look at that and put something together with that too. And I know you guys want some additional information related to this when we get to the item in the council meeting itself after this. Again, it's the same thing. Y'all can put it out there. You can decide today you want to put out there and see who applies, and that gets us closer down the road, and then we'll get the answers to those questions in between. And if we decided here somewhere that maybe it's not more cost effective, maybe it's more cost effective to leave it the way it is, then if people apply, we'll tell them thank you for applying. And we just, we don't have to move forward with interviews, but at least we get the ball rolling on getting something done if that's what you guys choose to do.
That's right.
Any other questions on item 7C?
I have two things. One is just about I had a question about something in the description itself. It was just something that sort of stood out to me, and I had a question about whether this is kosher or not. It was under the sensory requirements section. That struck me as bizarre. for lack of a better word. Because obviously I can see why we would want an attorney who can see, but I also feel like we have an obligation to make sure that the job is as accessible to as many people as possible, and like leave it open for the possibility of a blind attorney. I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to be I don't mean to belabor this on a funny issue, but it just really stuck out to me as like, can we require that? Can we require that they have vision?
And you know what was interesting was the ones that we got from all the other cities. That, I mean, there was something very similar to this or exactly this in every one of them.
Really?
I don't know, Dara. Well, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that, because I think with the exception of potentially odor, all of those are legitimate requirements for the job.
Okay.
If you were not a single person legal department, I can tell you that, for instance, at the firm, we do have people who are colorblind who do just fine and you would never know. But it does take, a paralegal who's converting the documents from a red line into something that is accessible to a colorblind attorney. And so if that would not be a reasonable accommodation that you can make in a single person legal department, then you're not necessarily ruling out anyone who doesn't have those things if they were able to somehow adjust.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a legitimate requirement of the job. So you're just kind of making it clear to the public. So there's no expectation otherwise.
Okay. That's good.
What was your second one, Casey?
I just wanted to know, I mean, Dara, you have been our acting attorney. I just wanted to take your temperature a little bit on, and I don't mean to, I'm aware that it might put you in a weird position, so feel free to defer. But about this idea, about as we move forward with this potentiality of having an in-house attorney, I just wanted to take your temperature on what you think of this.
Okay, so that's a loaded question, right?
I know, I'm sorry. It's a really loaded question. I apologize.
Let me say what I can tell you.
Okay.
One, I have really enjoyed working with the city of Lamarque, and regardless of what happens in the future, I will be happy to continue working in whatever capacity that you need me. I do think there's a little bit, this is an apples to oranges comparison. Because the city has always been on a contract attorney basis, I think you are going to see both pros and cons if you move to an in-house city attorney. I think there are different motivations and different working situations for in-house attorneys. And I think the other thing that maybe Lamarque has benefited from in the past that might not show up until much later is because you do use specialized firms for most work that you do, you're benefiting from a higher level of efficiency. When you want a subdivision ordinance, instead of a 90-hour project to draft a whole new one that will match the new state law, it might take me half that or even less because I can split the billing among a lot of cities. And so, like I said, that'll be both a good thing and a bad thing, but I think you should kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at those numbers, is that what you do as an hourly billing rate is very different than the reality of what it takes to do the work sometimes. So I think you're going to see a little bit of a change there. I think I've told council before, and the situation's changed a little bit, but I'd say it's probably still somewhat true. The city, I've been around a long time. I used to kind of do overflow work for Ellis, so to speak. And that's where I started working with the city, is in litigation and in development projects. Back then, I think it was a pretty good fit because you would only use me on big projects. Now I think you're doing a lot of really progressive work. You're wanting to see changes quickly. And so now you may be in more of a position where you need an in-house compared to the past. But same thing, it's just going to be apples to oranges. I do think I have a little concern about someone who's both really great at municipal prosecution and really great as a transactional attorney or even a civil litigator. But As the city manager puts it, there's no way to know for sure what you get. And until that happens, I have offered, if you do end up with someone and I am able to stay on board, I'd be happy to kind of help with the transition if I can. That's about all I can say about that.
That was a very diplomatic and very good handling of my loaded question. Thank you. I'm sorry for putting you in that position on the grid of people, but thank you. That you did what I wanted, which was like, what are we not thinking of? What do I not even know to ask about what we might be facing with this? So thank you. Thank you, Dara.
Dara.
Yes, sir.
I don't want you to think that I'm trying to cross-examine you, but I do need to ask questions so that we can clarify maybe some of Casey's thoughts.
Sure.
And I don't know the answers to these. I'm kind of just asking you because I don't know, but maybe if you answer these, then that might open Casey's eyes maybe a different way. So is there such a thing as a city attorneys association or a municipal attorneys association in Texas?
There is. One of the big ones is the Texas City Attorneys Association, TCAA.
Okay, so if you were not working for Olson & Olson and you were our in-house city attorney and new laws have passed and new ways of writing ordinances have or new phraseology or wording in ordinances according to changes in state law are required. Couldn't you reach out to your municipal attorneys or city attorneys association, and wouldn't your colleagues help you with that verbiage? Shouldn't they help you with that verbiage?
So, okay, the answer to that, I'm sorry, it's going to be a lawyer answer. The answer is yes and no. So if you are content, and I say this from experience, because I actually do, aside from my work as general counsel for the city of Lamarque, one of the things I do is special projects for those large cities with in-house city attorneys. If you are content to sit back and wait and trust someone else's work, and it's going to require both of those things, then yes, you would certainly have access to those. Something that has happened, even specifically in Lamarque, is you've been one of the first to have some of the newer ordinances so that when other cities were still kind of dealing with the problem and just hoping there was no litigation, the city of Lamarque was already legal, had a brand new ordinance that matched the state law. You would, test run the ordinance, tried out those new procedures, and were making kind of minor modifications when everyone else was just now adopting a new ordinance. So I think there's been some benefit over time with that, but there are certainly some resources available. I also think that there are areas of law where even in-house attorneys, when they get really complicated, they tend to hire outside counsel. And another one of those is, for instance, small cell node placement was a highly complicated area of law, dealt with telecom, and I wrote maybe 30 ordinances on that particular subject matter, most of them for very large cities, but that would be one of the times where the city of Lamarque kind of benefits from that background knowledge. So sorry, but yes and no. Most of the time, probably yes.
Next question, and I don't really, again, I don't know the answer to this, but I am aware that there are such specializations in law, and I assume you all go to training to get this certification, and you have to pass a test to get the certification. There's such areas of specialization like trial law, or family law, I guess you would call it, or personal injury law, criminal law. And so you can become specialized in very different areas, even within law. Is there such a specialization that would probably benefit city attorneys, such as real estate law or trial law, prosecutorial law?
Okay, so I'm going to give another lawyer answer. Yeah, yes and no. Okay, so a little bit about municipal law in general. All those things that you named off, those are mostly board certifications for people who really get heavy into that area. Municipal attorneys generally do not have that luxury. I am basically expected to know everything about everything. all those areas you named off. So real estate, a little bit of criminal law, First Amendment, constitutional law in general, telecom, building codes, employment, you name it. And on top of that, the law changes every 2 years, or maybe longer than that if we're lucky. All of that is really, it's just a constant kind of training exercise. There is some training out there, but it definitely has to be balanced against what you're doing.
Sure.
And then every city is fairly unique. There are the International Municipal Lawyers Association and TCAA, do various kind of recognition programs. That said, for instance, I am not, recognized by either of those groups, even though I am involved in both groups. I've definitely spoken several times, and it's just because municipal law is honestly a very small world. And so your reputation among other municipal lawyers tends to kind of take the place of a lot of that certification, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on item 7C? Okay, if not, let's go on to item 7D, discussion relating to creation, adoption of an ethics ordinance for the city of Lamarque. Councilmember Chris Lane requested this, so we'll let him start. Councilman Lane?
Yes, sir. Besides your engagement, your experience with creating ethics ordinances was like one of the primary reasons that I voted for you to come to the city of Lamarque. And I would just like to start the process to construct one for our municipality.
Okay, so let me go through it. We've all kind of had a couple of talks about this in the last few days. So let me kind of explain what the draft is that you have, and then we'll go from there. So the draft that I gave you is a draft that was adopted from the ordinance that I put forward in the city of Pearsall when I was there, with necessary changes in language, city names and stuff. It's the same ordinance. It just went in and changed it basically from down there to up here with the city names. That ordinance, what it does is it establishes a code of conduct and standards for city council members and appointed officials. So it applies to everybody that's elected and to everybody that's appointed. So it would apply to mayor, city council, all the boards and commissions, and myself is basically who it applies to, because employees don't fall under this because they have their own code of standards in the personnel handbook, and they have a mechanism for dealing with anything that comes up related to them has to go through my office. So they're excluded from this. The ordinance itself establishes that code of conduct. 2, it establishes an ethics commission. The purpose of the ethics commission is to review claims that are filed against any elected or appointed official for a violation of an ethical standard. Those claims go to an ethics commission. They don't go straight to the city council. That commission then reviews them with assistance from the city attorney to make sure that they meet the requirements under the ordinance. And if they meet the requirements under the ordinance, then they are forwarded to the city council for additional consideration. So a notice of a violation will be filed with the commission. The commission only reviews that initial filing to determine if it meets the ordinance. They're not finding whether somebody did something wrong or didn't do something wrong or whatever. They're just, does it meet the ordinance? Is this actually something that under the ordinance would be a violation? At that point, it's forwarded to the city council. City council then can either choose to say, well, we don't think there's anything here, that we don't want to waste city resources on this because we don't think there's anything here, or we know there's nothing here, so we're going to remove that. We're going to stop it here. Or they can say, yeah, there is something. We think there's something here, or we need to look and find out because we don't know. At that point, it's forwarded to the city attorney for investigation. The city attorney then writes a report and presents that report to the city council. And then the city council takes that report, and then they determine from that report any actions that they deem appropriate under the ordinance. So the commission reviews it, says, yeah, the application at face value would designate an ethics violation. Goes to city council. City council says, well, we don't know anything about this. At face value, it looks like it would. We agree it would. City attorney, here, you take this and you go investigate this and come back with us with a report. City attorney then takes that and goes and does the investigation of the claim. And the city attorney then comes back to city council and says, okay, here's the claim that was made. Here's the investigation that was done. I talked to all the relevant parties related to it. Here's everything that came out. Not saying I think they were guilty or innocent. They said this happened. Here's what happened. And then it comes back to council to make a decision related to that. It establishes the policy itself, the definitions, who it applies to. It establishes what would violate it, what those standards are. Let me see what else. How a complaint would be filed. What the procedures are. There's different procedures in there for filing against a council member versus filing against somebody that's on a board. I think that's the majority of what's in this one. And then of course it establishes the ethics commission, which is the initial stages of the review process. When I first did this ordinance in Pearsall and we adopted it down there, it was something very different. It was something that had not been, most cities had not even looked at anything like this, because in their charters, a lot of times they have some standards that are met. So of course, any violation of the charter would be an ethical violation as well. It gives a mechanism for addressing charter violations. It gives a mechanism for doing all those things. There's room for things to be changed or things to be amended to make it more comfortable. But the basic premise that it works under, it's been all the way. It's been one step short of the Texas Supreme Court, and it was upheld every level that it went. So it's there. I'm sure you guys have a bunch of questions. I mean, as far as if anybody has some changes they want to see in it, I don't think we have a whole lot of issues with changes. Now, originally we brought this out at the council workshop, or the council council retreat that we had last year, for discussion purposes, so we could look at maybe putting some changes in it that would make it more appropriate for the city of Lamarque. We didn't really get into a discussion of changes that would make it more appropriate because we didn't move forward with it. So that's why it was put on the agenda as a discussion item, so we can discuss any potential changes anybody wants to see in it, what we may want to do different in it. And then of course it'll have to be, we'll have to find a place where it fits in our code. So after we find any potential changes or anything we want to make with it, then we'll have to get there to figure out where it fits in the code and get some numbers on it so that it fits into everything that we have, the way that we have. So it's on here as a discussion only item for this time, so we can talk about changes or whatever we want to do to it. And then once we get it, and it may take, depending on how much discussion you guys have on it, it may take more than one review of it to get it where everybody's comfortable with it. But once we get everybody comfortable with it and with what it does, then we'll get the numbers on it and we can get it set up for a first reading. So with that, I'll just open it up and you guys can ask away.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Well, you did a great job on the Pearsall ordinance. I'm in favor of it. I want to ask the council, do they think this is a discussion that needs to be like in a workshop setting rather than doing it now? I'm just throwing that out there. It seems like I have no problem with the way Tink has it written now, but some of you may have some other thoughts. I'm just throwing that out there.
Mayor, I would like to sit with it as long as possible to make sure we get it right. I don't want to rush into an ordinance and release some things out. So I want to sit with it and work with it until we're able to put a good product on the table.
Right.
Mayor, I'm in agreement that a workshop would be a good idea because it'll take some time. I did make some, I sectioned this out and I did make some suggested edits to it. I've provided that to Tink and to Deere. I would like for them as it said, to provide, it will add to the workshop for our discussion. And that way it gives you previous time to look at it. There's several things, some may not fit well, but some do. And some of it expanded on some of the do's and don'ts, responsibilities that are out there that can get any one of us in trouble. And I also have made suggestions about some changes about when these things can be brought before council so that it cannot be and should not, it should protect the integrity of the ordinance and our city and not to be weaponized and used as a political tool. So if y'all would email those out, everybody can look at them and then we can set the workshop. I'm good with that, Mayor.
And I will say just real quick, originally, we set this up for a workshop because that was what I wanted to do. I think when I did this the first time, it was kind of in a politically charged environment. I don't know what else to call it, because there was a council member who was repetitively doing stuff that violated the charter, and so it was not a smooth process to get it in the first time. And that's the way we finally got a product done, was by sitting down on a workshop and going through it section by section. And I would be more than happy to do that again, because I think at the end of the day, we want the absolute best product that we can get for our citizens. And I would be, I would much prefer a workshop setting one time where we get through all of it and we get it done, and then we put the numbers on it and we go forward. I think, and that's the way I prefer to work on everything. But that's entirely up to you guys as well. So I'll leave that up to you.
Mayor.
Yes.
Help me to understand what you're asking when you ask about a workshop, because this is a workshop that we're in right now, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem, I meant devoted entirely to this issue, where we could take whatever it needed to take, whether that's several hours, to get it where we want it as a council.
Okay.
And we could do that. We could do that in a couple of days. 3 days notice. It doesn't take very long to get it advertised, and that way everybody has a little bit more chance to look through it. If you guys have comments and you want to put those comments together, we can get them out to everybody really quick, so everybody has everybody's comments right there in front of them. And Dara, is there some way on this thing? I'm assuming there's some way on this we could put it up on screen section by section and make edits. Can you broadcast a screen?
Yes, I can definitely do that. Like I said, your internal IT department is hosting this meeting, but I think he could do that as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
so
won't be no problem.
Yeah, so we can put it up there one section at a time. You guys could have your notes. Here's section 1.1, and everybody says, okay, I agree or disagree, or this is what I want to see changed. We agree, and then we go, this is section 1.2, section 1.3. That way, when we get done with it, it's everybody's had a chance to have full input on the whole thing. We don't miss something that anybody wanted to talk about, and when we get done, then everybody's in agreement on what we put together, and we get it finished up. And that might be that might actually be the quickest way to get this thing out for first reading too.
Yeah, if I may, I just want to comment. I'm not trying to push this down the road. 3 days from now is fine with me.
Yeah.
I'd like to get the first reading and the second reading done as quickly as possible and get it on the books. That was the purpose of my question, to get everything that everybody wants in it.
So if that's what people want to do on item 5D on the regular agenda when we get to it, under new business, then we could just set the date and time for the workshop. If that's what, I mean, whatever you guys want to do, then that's your pleasure.
Sounds good.
Is everybody, does that where we think we're headed? So if we are, we'll just.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think I'll be available at that day though, during that time frame. It would have to be later in the day, if that's okay with everybody.
At 6 o'clock, you mean?
What date are we talking about? What date?
3 days from now, we're talking about Thursday, correct?
3 days from now would be Thursday at 6 o'clock. Well, we wouldn't get it noticed.
I cannot make Thursday. I could probably do Friday. Thursday, we have 3 Zoom meetings to interview the new chamber president. I'm happen to sit on that committee, so I won't be available Thursday.
What about Friday? Everybody available on Friday? What about during the day on Friday?
Friday's bad. It would be next week.
What about next Monday? What about next Monday at 6?
Yes.
Casey, next Monday at 6, are you okay? Mayor?
Yes.
Good. I'm good.
Councilman Midstead, you good?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Lane?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That'll give us plenty of time to get it noticed as well.
Mr. Jackson, do you want me in on that meeting, or you want me to just take a look when it's completely done?
No, I think I want you there. Unless you got bigger plans that night.
No, I don't.
Okay, let's move on to item number 7E, discussion relating to formalizing the letter to the governor and or others requesting property tax valuations be maintained at 2019 values. I'll start with this. Dara drafted a letter which I made a localized change to, and that's what's in your packet. So the floor is open for you guys to discuss that letter.
Tink, I was on a call with Mr. Middleton and Larry Taylor and about 40 others from the chamber this afternoon, and it was addressing just such those items of property taxes. TCISD was on there also, and their push is to try to maintain it at a 2019 level. I don't know that will succeed, but in addition to sending it to the governor, it should also go to our appraisal district. He was also on the call, and there are other appraisal districts within the state that to stay at the 2019 level for everybody. And it's a difficult thing for all taxing entities to absorb, but there are others that have taken that stance.
Derek, can you address for us, is it possible for an appraisal district to maintain those rates, or by law were they not required to reappraise?
I believe they are required to reappraise, which is where the specific sections in the letter are, we're asking the governor and or the legislature to suspend those sections that would require appraisal districts to be done with those reappraisals by a certain date. And so I would have to do some research into the details Mr. Midstead is talking about specific appraisal districts. I have not heard anything to that effect. They might be doing it temporarily to the extent the law gives them that leeway. But I think there will come a point when, unless that law is suspended, they would have to adopt the new appraisal values.
Yeah, and so I've talked to some of you guys about this individually, and I want to make sure we're very clear about a lot of this. So the state required there's a law that requires those appraisal districts to reappraise and to increase those values and get them closer to the market value of homes that was established, I think 3 years ago now, or whatever it was, 4 years ago now, 3 years ago now. The purpose of that law being passed was to increase funding for schools. I mean, that was the whole purpose of that law being passed, was to increase the funding to the school districts. And on top of that, the state put in those clawback provisions. So every year the appraised value goes out, everybody collects the appraisal district collects your taxes. When the appraisal district collects our taxes, the portion they collect for the city of Lamarque, they send us a check. The portion they collect for Galveston County, they send them a check. The portion they collect for TCISD, they send to Austin. And Austin has provisions in there where they claw back from certain school districts to give to other school districts based on the income levels of those schools and the population of those schools or whatever. So most school districts collect X number of dollars, but that's not what they get because the state claws part of that away from them to go to other school districts. Those clawback provisions, the escalations in the clawback provisions are in place regardless of what happens. My biggest concern with this, and you guys have to do something. I mean, you need to do something to the letter. I don't think there's any issue with the letter. I don't know if the letter is really going to go. It's not going to do anything, but because the state doesn't care what we think, they show us that at every level all the time. But my concern is, let's say that they did stick to the 2019 appraisal levels. If he doesn't also address the clawback provisions, TCISD is going to lose money. And if the appraisal district was in some way able to keep our numbers at the 2019 numbers, I think at the same time, TCISD is going to lose money. So I think we got to be very, I think this needs to be a holistic look at this to make sure that our school districts are the ones that aren't getting hammered, because the school districts are the ones that stand to lose most out of this, all the way across the board. Now, the second part of this, and I'll be honest, and I think I was talking to Councilwoman McAuliffe about this earlier. I've not heard a lot of complaints out of Lamarque about this, even though by what I've seen online, I've seen that it looks the numbers that somebody put out there on social media were that our increases were bigger than everybody else's. Our appraised value last year was $995 million, just over $995 million. Our appraised value this year, our initial appraised value before they have the appeals and everything else to it, is $1.175 billion. So that's a total increase of $179 million. That's a pretty big increase. I mean, that's about approaching a 20% increase in the city. That's a good thing for us as a city because we could actually get some more stuff fixed. But if that was all simply from the appraisal district saying, well, we're just going to assess everybody an extra percentage, that's a problem. But we have to break that number down and look at that number. 33 million of that's new property in town. I mean, we can take that right off the bat. That 33 million is new stuff that's been built since we were appraised last year. And then so that leaves 146 million that we don't know exactly where it came from, but we do know that we've had lots all over town that have been purchased and homes have been built on them this year. We've had stuff rebuilt. We've had we had a bunch of Harvey homes that were built this year that were put on the books. So you replaced a $30,000 or $40,000 home with a $60,000 or $70,000 home, so that increased the appraised values as well. So getting the actual amount of what our net increase was above percentage-wise, very hard to figure out. And so when you see those posts on social media right now saying, well, our city got this amount, increase. Well, that's not necessarily true if your city's growing. If your city's growing, you would have a net increase in your appraised value. You should. You want that net increase to be real, and you want it to be big. I mean, you want your city to be growing and bringing in those higher value items as well. So, we need to look at that all the way across the board. I do agree, though, in a situation like this, telling people that are in the middle of this pandemic and are facing all kinds of other struggles right now, that if that was true, we're going to increase your property taxes 16% too. That's not. I mean, that's pretty tough for anybody to swallow. The letter. I think the letter is on point. I think it addresses our concern. It addresses the governor's options. And I think if there's anything else you guys want to add in the letter, we can talk about that now. I think the letter serves the purpose that you guys were asking for the other day. And I think as a council, you need to send it. Any questions on the letter?
I'm in agreement with the letter. I think is well written, Tink. I would suggest the appraisal district to be copied. Thank
Anybody
you.
else? Any other entity that anybody else wants to add on there as a copy besides the appraisal district?
And Mr. Jackson, if I could just remind
Sure,
you about this. Thank you, Mayor. So the SB2 went into effect as well, and we are just now seeing that. Remember that lowered the rollback rate on taxes. So if for some reason our appraised values did go sky high, that's going to act as a bit of a balancing relief valve and require that the city's tax rate actually be adjusted if it gets too high based on those appraised values.
Any other comments or questions on 7E? Okay, move on to 7F, discussion relating to ratifying emergency business retention program expenditures. Mr. Getty, you on?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, Alex, why don't you go ahead and talk about the program, and then Mr. Bell, if you want to follow up after him.
Sure. As the orders started coming down in mid-March, we started internal discussions about what we might possibly be able to do to help prop up our businesses in Lamarck. At first, we're talking about, unknown territory. How long is this going to last? What is it going to look like? And those kind of things. We really didn't have anything to base it on. And while we were doing internal discussions, we were fortunate in the fact that a neighboring city, Clear Lake Shores, rolled out a program, and they kind of created the wheel that we were able to use ultimately after Texas City revised it some. We had that benefit as well. And then we rolled ours out and met by telephone special meeting on April 2nd. The goal of the program was just to help as many businesses as we could. We knew that going forward, less closures is better for Lamarck long term, right? So, how could we help? What could we do? We kind of had to build the plane while we were flying it because of the nature of this and how fast things were changing, and really all the unknowns of really what was going to happen and future orders and extensions, et cetera. We knew that we needed to get some funds into our business owners' hands as quickly as possible. We didn't know what was ultimately going to happen with the Paycheck Protection Program or any of the other incentive or grant programs that were available. We knew what we could control, and that we knew that acting was the right thing to do. We knew we couldn't sit back and do nothing.
Okay, you want to tell before Mayor Pro Tem, before you start, Alex, you want to go ahead and tell us what happened and where you went?
How many requests have y'all had?
We had 67 applicants.
Have y'all had any more inquiries? How many more inquiries have you had for the second round?
None for the second round. We were waiting for the meeting tonight and that get the direction, and then going from there, we would see when the board would be able to meet again.
Okay.
As far as round two, I've gotten one phone call based upon some news that had come out about the potential for it to happen. But other than that, so far people are just kind of waiting for that big announcement, I think.
Okay, so you'd be anticipating, say, opening up a week, they file, and then, it's not a something that hangs out there for 2-3 months.
Can't do it.
Okay.
No, I would recommend the same time frame that we allowed on round one. It worked really, really well. Talking to some neighboring cities who let it go for an extra day or two, they really were inundated, and it was hard to get the program rolled out in an efficient manner. And the goal was, particularly with round one, to get the dollars into businesses' hands as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, you want to talk about what you're...
I was gonna say, I because of the how the issue kind of played out in the beginning, I kind of stepped in, and so the first round of grant funding came out very quickly. The timelines were very quick, and rightfully so. Because of the nature of what we were dealing with, we had to expedite things. Consequently, I received a lot of feedback that there were a lot of business owners in Lamarque that didn't know that this program was available, and B, there was some issue on what you did or did not need to do to qualify. For example, initially the program thought that this program should be available only to those businesses that generate sales tax. Quickly we found out, and I wasn't a part of that at that particular time, but we as a city, we as an economic development corporation, we found out that we needed to help businesses that didn't generate sales tax if we really wanted to save the economic infrastructure of our city. And so I called Tink to represent those businesses. He set up a meeting with Alex. I sat down with Alex and Mr. Crowder. They were nothing but transparent. They were nothing but nice about the whole process. They showed me the timeline. They showed me those businesses that were granted funding. And they even asked if we thought as a council it would be beneficial if that program be extended. And I said that I thought that the program would be extended. Yes, we helped 64 out of 67 businesses, but there are a little short of 400 business accounts, water accounts in our city. And so that leaves us over 300 businesses that may be eligible for this grant funding. And so I asked them if they would be open to adding about $500,000 more to this program. And they said that they didn't want to have $500,000 as a ceiling. They might needed to expend more funds based on some of the projections that they're looking at according to this virus. And so the program may be needed. I suspect that it will be needed. It'll be open to businesses that did not get a chance to apply the first round, and it will also be open to businesses that applied and were granted funding in the first round, because the object is to keep Lamarque small business afloat as much as we can do as a city government, as an economic development corporation. The idea is to keep those businesses afloat because they're the backbone of our town. If those businesses begin to collapse, then the infrastructure of our town will collapse. And so it's important that we make this available to them. Mr. Getty also asked if I would serve, or if council would choose another representative, but I've already said that I would serve on the committee to look at these applications. Currently, Mrs. Barrett serves on that committee and Mr. Smith serves on that committee. I'd be delighted to join them. And I want to thank again Mr. Crowder, Mr. Getty, Ms. Barrett, Mr. Smith, and the entire Economic Development Corporation, because this was timely and it was needed.
Okay, any other questions on 7F, because we kind of got into 7G too. So let's just do any other questions on 7F or 7G. Discussions related to ratifying the program or discussions related to future funding opportunities. I think we've already kind of covered both.
As a member of the EDC committee, I would be, as my one vote, be in favor of that. And I would also, since Mr. Bell went back and tried to help these other businesses, that at the proper point, we appoint him to that committee as well, to the selection committee.
Agreed. I'm definitely in favor of that. Thank you, Councilman Bell, for.
And you'll have an action item in the next meeting to take care of that.
Yeah.
Any other questions on those two? If not, Mayor, I'm done.
If I might, real quick on G, kind of just a quick timeline point. So assuming it sounds like council's going to want us to move forward, I'm thinking that we'll probably just be able to hold our regular meeting, which is on the 21st. And then hopefully we could roll the program out, if approved, of course, on the 22nd. So that would give us more time, I think, Mayor Pro Tem, to kind of chum the waters, if you will, and let folks know we think this is coming, be looking for it on the 22nd. And we'll probably, again, if it's agreeable with everyone, run kind of that similar window. And we think that we'll have, plenty of opportunity for folks to apply.
Thank you, Alex.
That it, Tink?
I'm done.
We're going to move right into the City of Lamarck City Council meeting of May 11th, the regular meeting. Dara, do we need to read our prelude again, or are we good with that?
She said we're good.
Yeah. Kyle, are there any new viewers that need to hear what we're doing?
No, there isn't.
Okay, thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. And once again, we all know we're still here, but for the record, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
I had to unmute. Mayor Pro Tem Bell.
Here.
Councilmember District B, Chris Lane.
Present.
Councilmember District C, Robert Mitchtich. He's here. I see him. Councilman Mitchtich.
I'm here.
Okay.
Here.
Councilwoman District D, Casey McAuliffe.
Councilwoman District D, Casey McAuliffe, present.
And Mayor Hawking.
Mayor is present. Thank you. Item 3 is minutes, workshop minutes of March 9th, 2020, regular meeting minutes of March 9th, 2020, and emergency meeting minutes of March 13th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Chris Lane makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I believe that was Mayor Pro Tem making the second.
Yes.
All in favor, signify. Do we need to call the roll here, Tink?
I would.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please, on each vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell.
Yes.
District B.
Aye.
District C.
Aye.
District D.
Aye.
All righty, got it. Here.
Mayor is an aye, and show the motion passes. Item 4 is the consent agenda. Anyone wanting to pull anything from the consent agenda? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to item 5A, consider recommendation to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-003, amending the fiscal year 2019-20 budget disaster fund for COVID-19 crisis by increasing various accounts and expenditures as set forth in Exhibit A. I'll
Mayor.
entertain a motion.
I'm
Mayor,
sorry.
did you vote on the consent agenda?
No, nobody voted. Nobody gave me a first and a second on the consent agenda.
On the consent agenda, may I have a motion?
I motion to approve.
So
Oh.
second.
There's a
You're
motion.
fine. Second.
Yeah, there's a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call the roll. Sorry about that.
That's okay. District A.
Yes.
Okay. District B.
Aye.
District C.
Aye.
District D.
Aye.
Mayor Hawking.
Mayor is an aye. Show the motion passes. Sorry about that, guys. Item 5, I just read. I believe, had a motion and a second. Is that correct?
I didn't
Yes.
get it. So I can do it again.
Councilwoman McAuliffe motions to approve 5A.
I believe Mayor Pro Tem was the second.
Yes. Yes.
Madam, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell.
Yes.
District B.
Aye.
District C,
Aye.
District D.
Aye.
Mayor,
I'm a yes, show the motion passes. B, consider recommendation for current and future use for the ABC buildings and property located at 4916 FM 1765. I believe we've already determined that we're going to have a workshop on Monday. Everybody cool with that?
Actually, on B, we will get the numbers put together that were requested in the workshop, and we'll have it on the next council agenda for regular meeting.
Okay, great. Item C, consider recommendations relating to job description for proposed in-house city attorney. Mr. Jackson, do we need any action?
If you guys want us to go ahead and post it, I would ask for a motion to approve the job description and to post it and approval of that.
I'll ask for that motion.
I make a motion to post and approve the job description.
Is there a second?
Yes. Councilwoman McAuliffe.
Wonderful, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, will you call the roll, please, ma'am?
Mayor Pro Tem Bell,
Yes.
Councilmember District B,
Aye.
District C,
Aye.
District D,
Aye.
Mayor Hockey.
I'm an aye as well. Show the motion passes. Item D, consider recommendation relating to creation, adoption of an ethics ordinance for the city of Lamarque. Tink, would you like any action on that?
If you guys want to set the workshop would be, if it's going to be next Monday, that would be May 18th at 6 p.m.
And do
That's what you guys think.
we need a motion to that effect?
Yes, I would.
I'll entertain that motion.
This is Councilman Mitch Stitch. I make a motion that we set a workshop for the ethics ordinance on next Monday, May the, what was it, 18th?
18th, I believe.
Yes.
Councilwoman McAuliffe seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell,
Aye. Yes.
District D,
Aye.
District C,
Aye.
District D.
Aye.
Mayor Hockey.
Mayor's an aye as well. Show the motion passes. Item E, consider possible action relating to formalizing a letter to the governor and/or others requesting property tax valuations to be maintained at 2019 values. I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Councilman Mitch Stitch, I make a motion to support that item.
Is there a second?
I second that motion. Councilwoman McAuliffe.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
District A,
Yes.
District B,
Aye.
District C,
Aye.
District D.
Aye.
Mayor Hocking.
I'm an aye. Show the motion passes. Item F, consider recommendation relating to ratify emergency business retention program expenditures. I'll entertain a motion.
I make that motion. Councilwoman McAuliffe.
Thank you. Second.
Second, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, if you'll call the roll, please, ma'am.
District A,
Yes.
District B,
Aye.
District C,
Aye.
District D.
Aye.
Mayor Hocking.
I'm an aye as well. Show the motion passes. Item G, discussion relating to additional funding opportunities under the emergency business retention program. I'm going to make the motion that we approve that pending approval from the EDC and name Mayor Pro Tem Bell as our representative to that selection committee.
I second that motion. Councilwoman McAuliffe.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
District A,
Yes.
District B,
Aye.
District C,
Aye.
District D.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor.
I'm an aye as well. Show the motion passes. Item 6, appointments. Discussion, possible action regarding appointments and/or reappointments to fill various positions of boards and commissions. Anyone have an appointment? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7, requests and announcements. I'd like to start by sending on behalf of council and our city, our heartfelt condolences to the family of Lloyd Chris, who passed away. Lloyd Chris was not only a former council member of the city of Marque, he was a state rep for our region and a fierce chairman of the Democratic Party for many years. And we certainly send our condolences to Susan and all of their family. Anyone else?
Yes, I have a couple. I wanted to request that we add an item to next month's agenda discussing the purchase of the ABC building. And then I also just wanted to, what a time we're living in. I wanted to just say, because this is the platform available to me, that again, I wanted to say in this council meeting, I said it at our special meeting, but I think it's never been more obvious how integral leadership is to, and I should be clear, how government leadership is integral to our daily lives, and how integral it is when things fall apart due to unseen and due to, acts of God and forces of nature. And I'm so incredibly grateful to our municipal leadership, to our staff, to the people who are a part of every day making sure the city of Lamarck goes on marching. It's just a feat that honestly is hard for me to even fathom. And I know that my fellow council members and our mayor are also doing their due diligence and doing their best to make sure that we are informed and we are making decisions on behalf of our residents here in this city that are looking towards the future. But it is it's you guys and so many more who aren't on this call. And I'm so grateful for it as a citizen and also as an elected council member. I really, really appreciate it. And I also wanted to say that I believe it's imperative that we act as if this virus is far from over. And, in order to avoid climbing infection rates, that all of us should individually be doing whatever we can to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And, there's, as mentioned earlier, a lot of restrictions on our ability as a municipality. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the rest of the council in any way, just my personal feeling. There's a lot of restrictions on what we can do as a municipality, but it's my personal opinion. When you should wear a mask, you should continue to practice social distancing, even as we begin to explore how we can rebuild economy and rebuild things. We have to think of how every interaction that we do is not only potentially putting ourselves at risk, but more importantly, putting our community at risk. And I don't think I would be a good community leader if I didn't say, just think about your neighbors, think about the least among us, and be smart and be kind. And with that said, think about these city workers who continue to make things happen for you. You continue to have running water, you continue to have electricity in your home, and you continue to have your trash and your recycling picked up, and you continue to have the phones answered. And that doesn't happen by magic. That happens because we have people looking out for you. And so the least we can do, each of us as a resident of the city, is to look out for the people who take care of us. So, all right, that's enough from me. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. And as for me and our house, we're self-quarantined, and we're going to do our part. First of all, me, to protect my wife and her immune system, and secondly, to protect others that are around us. And it's very difficult, as you say. It's difficult for us not to hug our grandkids and our kids, but I think everybody should mask up And if you don't have to be out, don't be out. And I think, once again, I concur with you. Our staff has done a wonderful, wonderful job. I see Public Works all over town just fixing broken pipes and humping and really doing a great job. So thank you for saying that. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Somebody else tried. Did you want to go, Robert? Did you want to go?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll wait.
Okay. I just wanted to, Mayor, I wanted to echo your comments on Lloyd Chris. Certainly he was a dynamic public servant and a fierce competitor politically. And he's going to be missed. And certainly our condolences go out to the Chris family. Also, I wanted to say that today in our city, we had another shooting. And it sounds like it occurred at the same spot as one of our previous shootings. This, as much as we want to paint a rosy picture in Lamarck, and certainly we have a lot of issues that we can be proud of. One of the ongoing and lingering issues that we have is the issue of crime as it relates to drug and gang violence. And so in the coming days, I'm going to ask Tink, I'm going to ask that you set up a meeting with Chief Jackson, with Constable Derrick Rose, with the Texas City Police Chief, if we can get him or her or whomever that person is, and with the representative, the Texas City Commission representative of, I believe theirs is District 1 is what they call it. I'd like to see if we all can meet on Zoom, if we have to see if we can come up with a plan, a joint effort to attack this criminal element that harbors themselves in West Texas City, but that commit many of their crimes in Lamarck. And there has been a lot of talk from our residents and our citizens about some of the crime issues in our city. And so, Tink, I'd like for you to set that meeting up by Zoom. Perhaps if it goes well, we can bring a package back to council for them to act on so that we can put more resources into our law enforcement efforts to deal with that criminal element that continues to murder each other in front of and around our citizens. It is unacceptable and it has to stop now.
I'll reach out to them to see if they'll meet with us.
Thank you.
Tink.
Hold on, Rob. One more thing. If they don't meet, Tink, let's see if you, myself, and Chief Jackson can put our heads together. We can still bring that to council. Thank you.
Tink, I wouldn't mind joining in on that because of the previous meetings and conversations we've had with outside contractor on possible camera systems at strategic points that could help deter some of this. But my final thing is I wanted to thank all the mothers, and I hope they had a great Mother's Day. And it was a difficult Mother's Day for a lot of folks who weren't able to see theirs. And to Councilwoman McAuliffe, your first Mother's Day, I'm sure it was great, but it can only get better from here. Thank y'all.
You're muted, Mayor.
Any other comments? Mr. Jackson, do you have anything further?
The only other thing I can think of is I think it's tomorrow is somebody's 21st birthday.
Yeah, add about 50 years to that.
No, you're up. So don't forget tomorrow's mayor's birthday. So everybody wish him happy birthday. And that's all I've got for tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Motion for adjournment. Who seconded? Casey, did you second?
I didn't, but I shall. Councilwoman McAuliffe seconds.
Fine. Do we need to call the roll on this, or can we just call it?
Nod
a-
heads. Nod heads.
Everybody nod your head.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, council. We'll see you next time. This meeting is adjourned.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.